anybody was implicated, is that the Act provides an opportunity for people who are implicated to question witnesses, to get the documents, and to respond. And some of us were surprised when the public protector said she had finalized the report, because the question is, even if they may have acted in a manner where they delayed the report, but their right to question witnesses is legislated, is not a right you can take away. And we began to suspect that the report may not be finalized. And when you read it, you actually understand that she did not violate their rights in a sense of saying, I have made the findings against you. What she has done is to say, I have made observations, and these observations will be better be taken care of by the second phase. Normally, she starts a report and she concludes it. She doesn't have phase 1 or phase 2. But given that she had time constraints, she said, I'm going to make some observations, and I'm not going to violate people's rights in a sense that I'm not going to make findings against them, but I'll point out what I consider to be concerns. But given South Africa, we are so easily excitable. Even when the report has not said this, we already act as if the report had said that. But that does not mean that there are no grave issues that appear there. For instance, one of the questions is really that there is this family, the Gupta family. The question that is being raised, did it have an influence, undue influence, in the appointment and removal of ministers? And in her observations, she comes out that it appears, and she used words like it seems, it appears, because she's not making a finding of fact. But she says there is something that suggests that there might be problems here. And then she looks at, for instance, the ESCOM. She looks at how the boards are directors on executive and non-executive directors are appointed. And on the basis of it, she says there seems to be non-compliance with certain acts like the PFMA. And it's something that we need to look at. So she has been more careful. Actually, I end up having more respect because I thought she would have violated other people's rights. But when you look at it, she has not done so. She simply says, I make these observations, and given that there is an issue that one would say, if she had time, she probably would have gone through other steps. But it appears she had less trust in anybody, concluding that, hence the suggestion that there should be a judicial commission of inquiry. But even then, she moves into a space. The appointment of a judicial commission of inquiry is a right that is reserved constitutionally to the president. But she seems to have overstepped that, and it will be something that the Minister of Justice may want to have a look at it, whether somebody could instruct, because those powers are not there for convenience. Those powers are given to a president, they're not given to any other person. But she also says, in defense of herself, the president did say somewhere he would not appoint a commission of inquiry because it will be like appointing the judge and the jury. But it will be something that maybe the Chief Justice, because this has been suggested, might want to look at. But it's a question of whether certain powers that are given to somebody constitutionally can be delegated to any other grouping.
Now, Prof, let's look at some of the individuals that have been implicated in this report. And it's actually great that you unpacked it for us in terms of the observation versus findings theory. Yeah. Because I think throughout the day, even looking at social media, there was a lot of confusion as to what the report actually means. You had different people unpacking it the way they see it. Yeah. And isn't that the case, that you are going to have various people interpreting the report differently? Sure. And that might be either detrimental or beneficial to those who are implicated. Let's look at the possible reaction of those who are implicated. Can we foresee them having a right to response, and how would that work? Would we have to be in a position where we wait for the Judicial Commission to start?
Yeah, well, when an observation has been made and it's not a finding, you could actually say, I'm willing to assist. The question that needs to be asked is whether the idea of the commission, because whatever recommendations and remedial actions she suggests, now we know that they're binding. So the question is that in that report, whether they will want to intervene, and even if it's an observation, but if it affects me adversely, I would like to correct that observation. It may not be, she may not be making accusations, but she simply says there's a behavior that is untoward here. There seems to be a violation. And she's, as I say, she's been very careful because she understands the law, because that, as I say, that was one of our concerns. And the president had gone to court precisely for that reason, to simply say, I have not been offered an opportunity. But she makes no bold claims to say you are guilty of this. She says it appears like you might be guilty of the following. But given that I don't have time, I'll leave it to the next person to start looking at it and then take it from there. So the concept of even her saying it was finalized, when we now read what she had said, we can see this was not finalized. But what she says, she has finalized what was allowable in terms of constraints of time and resources for herself. But she didn't want this to be somebody else's responsibility. I mean, we find it very interesting that she didn't say, given the time constraints, I'll leave this responsibility to the next public protector. So it almost appears like she couldn't even trust her successor on this matter, because if she had time and resources, she should have continued to do it.
Now, Prof, what does this mean for the implicated parties in this observation of the previous public protector?
Well, I mean, they can go to court, but as I say, what will be difficult is on what basis? Because if somebody says it appears and somebody does not say you are guilty, I mean, if somebody said it appears like you are guilty, would I go to court to try to prove my innocence when the statement of guilt has not been pronounced? You see, and as I say, this is not the first report she has written, and her choice of words are deliberate. They are deliberate and also guiding us that we must not jump into conclusions. Everywhere else she has talked about findings, but here she says, I see these observations, and because I don't have time, I do think that I would suggest that they be looked at. So in a sense, she has almost written the terms of reference for the Judicial Commission of Inquiry.
Now, Prof, it's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because she used a lot of safe words in the report, worrying,
Sure.
It seems like this is the observation, as you've continuously said. I want us to shift focus now to the ruling party, because everybody was waiting to hear what they would say and how they would react to the state capture reports. We have them saying that they welcome the release of the public protector's report, and they view the allegations very seriously. Another thing that their spokesperson said was that they will be using this report to restore the credibility and confidence of the people
Sure.
in the party. Let's unpack that statement, because it's an important statement.
Sure.
But on the other side, it can be viewed as very safe also. It's not saying anything, but then again, they might have not had enough time to look through it.
Well, I mean, in their defense, and when they defend themselves, they're saying, we as a ruling party did take the concerns of state capture seriously. That's why we suggested that the people who are members of the ANC, who are aware of this, should come to us. But what they didn't realize, that some members of the ANC no longer trusted the capacity, the willingness, and the orientation of that leadership. They wanted an institution or a space that they would see as not contaminated. So they had more trust in the public protector than in their own party. So that is the first thing that the ruling party in their defense says, no, we tried our people, but they don't realize that there's a disaffection even among their own people. That's the first thing. Then the second thing is that democracy is something that has to be tested. You know, we behave in this country as if you come up with rules and the rules are clear. I mean, if you go to countries that, even the United States, where they talk about democracy being over 200 years, or Britain, you still find that there are contestation around the constitutional issues, because it's never smooth sailing. Democracy is boisterous, it's messy, people make mistakes. That's why we have the laws. And what the party is saying is that if we now have the benefit of a report, it is our job to read it and to see how we can strengthen so that we do not find ourselves making mistakes. And I think political parties that get into power will continue to make mistakes. That's the nature of democracy, because new people come in, and if you saw today, the people who used to be in government are taking those who are in government, because they are saying the renewal of new people means that you have people with different levels of integrity, different understandings and all that. And that's the nature of democracy. The new renewal, having different people, means that the insights that some people had who had left become lost to the incoming generation.
Now, Prof, just to continue on that, speaking of the ruling party, now let's speak about the opposition making calls for the president to step down.
Well, the opposition does not need any report to call for the president to step down. There have been motions of no confidence that have been coming thick and fast in the last year and in the last 2 years. So every excuse that emerges is an excuse or an event to exploit. So they had even called for the president to step down, or a motion of no confidence, even before the report. So one should not use the report to understand the orientation of the opposition parties. And it's also allowable in their own, because what they are also trying to do is that a motion of no confidence is also it gives them a space to damn the president and to damn the ruling party. So it is something that democracy allows. And the court had also said that when you have such motions, they should be prioritized. So the ruling party finds itself unable to deal with that. But I do think that they'll use words like impeachment, they'll use words like motion of no confidence. But impeachment is much more of a longer process. It's a complex, unlike a motion of no confidence, which requires simply a simple majority. But what they're also doing, they're also trying to divide members of the ANC. And they're saying, and Julius Malema is a master in that, he says to people like Pravin and the people who like Motsoaledi, he says, if you guys claim what you say in the media, we are going to pass a motion of no confidence on the president. And if you are honest, we would like to see that honesty, that you cannot have it both ways. You cannot want to remain in the party, in the ANC, and when you see the media, then you present yourself as holier than thou. So when you have a motion of no confidence, and Maimane has also made the same, said, no, Jackson must stop talking. We are coming up with a motion of no confidence. Let's see what he's going to do.
Now, Prof, just to go back to what you said in your previous answer about democracy can be tested.
Yeah.
And I think you've mentioned it a couple of times this evening, saying that you're disagreeing with some of the political analysis on this report, where people are acting like this is the first time this happens ever in the world. Would you say that the issue here is the amounts of money that are mentioned in this report? And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because of the public outcry. So you see a lot of figures being thrown around.
Sure.
We know the situation, the socio-economic challenges in South Africa. And if people hear that, state resources are being abused, if they hear that companies are being favored, whereas you've got government punting the thing of supporting small business, supporting black business, etc. So wouldn't you say that's the reason why the public is so angry? Because it would be justifiable looking at the amount of money here.
Let's be clear about this. The right of people to question is what defines democracy, and that we'll continue to question. And we must also understand that South Africa is not different. We are human beings. There are presidents, former presidents of countries. I mean, the president of Israel was jailed. You do have instances where former ministers are in jail. Partly because that's what democracy provides. That's why you have laws. You have laws because you want to protect people from themselves. But there are times when people cannot be protected from themselves, and that's why they end up in jail. So the South Africans, actually for me, South Africa is a very vibrant society. When people are unhappy, they raise the issues. They raise the issues through the courts. They raise issues through parliament. They raise issues through demonstrations. So we should actually be excited about the vibrancy of our democracy. But to expect that it will be smooth sailing, we're misleading ourselves. And sometimes we tend to think that the people we vote into power are angels. They are not. These are people, some of them are thugs. So the thuggish behavior will also be there. So the issue is the laws are there to make sure that we minimize the behavior of people who might be thuggish, and hence we have all these laws of ethics. We have issues. We have the PFMA. These laws exist precisely because we understand that people are more inclined to do wrong. But there are others who act ethically, and what you see in the demonstration is that we expect leadership to have that level of that sense of moral and ethical leadership.
Now, Prof, before we wrap up, just very quickly, we spoke to Professor Sipho earlier, and he touched on the issue, on the fact that he thinks that the commission of inquiry is just an unnecessary process. Your take on that?
Well, I mean, I don't know about his wisdom on the matter. The Commission of Inquiry, and especially as suggested by the public protector, and I think she's wiser on these matters than Professor Sipho, to simply say it will unearth a lot of things. The problem with the Commission of Inquiry is that it will come with recommendations, and some of the recommendations may not be binding. So the issue of waste of time, I do not think, but if you want to build society, you would like to say, let's shine light into our challenges and improve of that. You see, the Commission of Inquiry is unlike a court or the prosecution. You are also trying to say, how do we remedy the situation beyond simply the issue of punishment? And what these guys are looking for, what he says, is more around issues of punishment, that the retribution. But the Commission is ready to say, how do we improve our own operations, our own functioning, and what are the laws that need to be strengthened. So it's much more broader than simply the issue of finding people guilty.
Now, just finally, Professor, before we wrap up, let's look at the Commission of Inquiry. Now, the President has about 30 days to set it up, and then it's going to have 6 months to do its work. Is it a case of the wait and see game now, so we have to wait it out and see what's going to happen afterwards?
No, I think you already have the opposition parties. They're not going to wait for that. And also where there are instances or incidents that suggest corruption, some of them are going to take that and they're going to be approaching the police to open cases, because sometimes you don't need, if there's enough evidence that suggests wrongdoing, you might actually go to the investigative offices to say, investigate this. We think that this provides a prima facie evidence that there is a wrongdoing. So we're going to see a lot of legal activity in the next coming few months, even as the commission begins to be set up.
Professor, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for that analysis. It was definitely insightful.